Well, folks, if you've been living under a rock, or you just simply don't happen to know what's going on in the world of cinema, the new Terrifier 3 trailer has dropped, and I must say, this looks like an upgrade. And by upgrade, I mean just look at the quality of this movie. Look how we're upping the stakes here. This looks like a proper sequel to a horror franchise, and rightfully so. And it's rightfully so that based on this trailer alone, that cinema and all of horror in general is officially back. We are back, folks, and I've been completely vindicated on this point over and over again this year. Because you know why? Because you normies couldn't allow us to enjoy TV shows when movies were failing. But now since movies are back and you normies have taken over TV shows and you ruined that fucking side of things, cinema is here to stay. And you can go fuck yourselves if you don't agree with that. Nah, I'm just kidding. I love normies. Not really. But in all seriousness, what I am going to be serious about is if you guys go ahead and like and subscribe to this video and just go ahead and hit that notification bell, because you're going to want to know when I upload. You just are, alright? You don't want to miss out on this banger. This is a once in a lifetime kind of experience, alright? That's what cinema is all about. The once in a lifetime kind of experience that no one else can share with you. Maybe later, but in the moment, not so much. You get to have that moment. You get to cherish that moment like no one else can. So go ahead, hit the like and subscribe. And it's probably also the fact that I want to get monetized at some point on this channel. So just please help me out here on that. Please, please, please. But enough whoring myself out for viewership. We have the Terrifier 3 to talk about because there's quite a bit to talk about, and there is definitely a lot to appreciate based on what we've seen in this recent trailer. But before we do all of that, I kind of want to go ahead and rewind a little bit before I discuss any further thoughts on Terrifier 3's trailer. And the thing I want to discuss with you guys is how I found out about, the Terrifier franchise and what this whole, what these movies were about. And I think my first introduction to this franchise was either All Hallows Eve or the first Terrifier movie. I honestly cannot remember which one I watched first, but regardless of which one I watched first, I just remember that unsettling feeling that I had watching it. But then there was that nice balance of just like pure campiness and just ridiculousness altogether, because you look at someone like Art the Clown and you're like, I mean, no, he is creepy, don't get me wrong, but it's like at the same time, it's like, what's he gonna actually do? And then you see like all the shit that he does in the movies, and you're like, damn, wasn't expecting that. And I think that was kind of the charm that really brought me into this franchise, and just that overall, essentially, wow factor that these movies offered. Because you look at something like, from the very start of All Hallows Eve, that movie had a very low budget. I think the budget for that movie was $25,000 or $35,000. I'll put it up on the screen. Very, very cheap in terms of Hollywood budgets or just movie budgets in general. And you have to understand, a lot of Hollywood budgets in terms of horror movies, a lot of horror movie budgets, they're not the greatest. They don't shove out a lot of money to horror movies in general. But even with that, or like, low budgets in general, a lot of filmmakers in the past have done a lot of great things with low budgets, and they've made a lot of memorable stuff that, a lot of us would recognize, such as a lot of horror icons from late 70s, mid to late 80s, and so on and so forth. And the reason I bring that up is because, the Terrifier movies up into, let's say, Terrifier 3, a lot of them kind of look like they were shot on an iPhone, essentially. They kind of have that, let's say, cheap look to it. But at the same time, this is where the wow factor comes in. Even as, cheap as it looks, there's still that haunting feeling that, that you're going to remember when watching these movies. And I think I noticed this more with Terrifier 2 because, and I'll be honest with you guys, I almost didn't watch that movie because I looked at, I think it was Rotten Tomatoes or like the audience score. I don't look at the critic score. I trust what the audience has to say a lot more than I do critics. And a lot of what the audience members were saying was that, of course, the movie looked cheap, the storyline was all over the place, and a lot of things didn't quite make sense. And I think a lot of people are just bringing up the fact that it looked like it was shot on an iPhone. It really wasn't worth seeing in a cinema. But then I thought to myself, because I remember the night that I went to go see this movie, and it was pretty late at night because there weren't many showtimes for Terrifier 2 a couple of years ago, and up until I think the week after, because it did so well at the box office, they extended the showtimes into the next few weeks, I believe. But going back to what I was saying about going to see this movie, when I went to go see this movie, or I'd planned on it, I really was almost deterred from watching it. But then I remembered, based on the other movies, and like what I remember liking about All Hallows Eve and the first Terrifier movie was just that unsettling feeling while maintaining that like campy feel to the movie, because there's a lot of campy moments the Terrifier franchise has to offer. And I'll never forget that scene. I think it was in All Hallows Eve where Art the Clown is chasing one of his victims, and he's chasing her in a separate car, and he finally gets up to her, like he's like trying to, he gets right alongside her car, and he looks at her, and then he pulls out a gun, and you're like, what the fuck? He just pulled out a gun and shot the driver that was trying to help the girl get away. And you're like, that is not something you'd see in a lot of horror movies, or especially ones involving serial killer or supernatural serial killers. They like to take their time, like Michael Myers, Jason Voorhees, and so on and so forth. You look at those guys and they take their time, but then Art the Clown, he may take his time in some places, and other times like he will subvert your expectations. And that's what I think I really liked about the Terrifier movies, was that level of subverting your expectations, just that level of subversion that I think a lot of horror movies tend to offer, but I think the Terrifier franchise offers it in a very unique way. And for that reason, that's why I ultimately went to see Terrifier 2 at the cinemas, and I wound up having a good time. Now, granted, was it a good idea to go see it late at night? Probably not, because I think I did low-key get a nightmare. I don't know if it was the night of, or maybe the night after I had saw that movie, but I just remember, not only myself, but so many people next to me in my theater room just having the time of their lives and just laughing at so much bullshit in the movie, whether it be, the gross scenes that would make some gag, or just the overall terrible acting. That is what I think I've really liked the most about the Terrifier movies, is yes, it does offer a lot of horror elements that, is going to stand out for sure. And especially, its main star, Art the Clown. But you look at these movies and you're like, it has that cheap look to it, but at the same time, it's very unsettling, while also maintaining that campy nature that makes a lot of horror movies great, especially, ones from the 80s. And I can't remember which particular scene it was. I think it was the one scene in Terrifier 2 where the mom is just like having a breakdown, and you could tell like the actress is trying really hard to look like she's very emotional and she's just losing it. But the scene itself was just so funny that I remember everybody in my theater room, or nearly everyone, just laughing at how stupid it was and just like how horrible the execution of that scene was. But then, there are things to, make you forget that almost, because there, again, a lot of gross scenes that they're going to stick with you, especially that dinner table scene, or the one where Art the Clown goes in that girl's bedroom and he's like tearing her scalp open. Obviously, I'm not going to show you guys that scene on this channel because, number one, that's gross, and two, I might get my video taken down or flagged for, insensitive content. But you get the point. That's what these movies have to offer. And to some extent, that's kind of its charm. It has a nice balance of horror elements with, bullshit campy elements. But even with, those elements in the movie, that's what makes it memorable. That's what gives you that, lasting impression or impact on you. And I think that's why I kind of have an admiration for the Terrifier franchise, is because of that particular thing. But then you fast forward to now, where you get the recent trailer for Terrifier 3, and everything I mentioned about, the campiness and like the kind of cheap quality to the prior Terrifier movies. This movie looks like an absolute upgrade from what we've seen before. I mean, just take a look at the picture quality alone. the quality has been upped, and primary reason for that is because this recent movie has a budget of $2 million as compared to the prior movies, where I think Terrifier 2 had a budget of $250,000, and the ones before that wasn't even, it was like less than $35,000. But with this one, yes, I'm glad they upped the budget. It's about time they did, because I think this franchise really needed an upgrade, even though I kind of admire the cheap quality to some extent with the prior movies. This is a necessary upgrade, and everything looks great. A lot of things are standing out, and Art the Clown looks great and scary as ever, especially with the cinematography this film is offering. And another thing that this film is offering is higher stakes. Yes, a sequel that is upping the stakes, as any sequel should in a horror franchise. It looks like Art the Clown is a lot more unhinged. There's a lot more supernatural elements going on. And it also looks like they're going to further add on to the supernatural elements and maybe tie in some things from All Hallows Eve. Because if you've never seen All Hallows Eve, or if you're not familiar with that movie, it is considered an anthology movie because it tells, multiple stories, where I think some involve Art the Clown, but not every single anthology piece involves him. But there's some supernatural elements in some of those movies. Like, I think there's this one, like, satanic looking cult or a demonic cult, where some have speculated that's where Art originated from, or that's where he kind of gets that supernatural element from. And what I'm hoping in the sequel, that being Terrifier 3, is the fact that I'm hoping it's going to clear up some things, kind of give us more of Art the Clown's backstory, or maybe, clear up some confusion that some audience members had with Terrifier 2, because in Terrifier 2, they did, kind of add in some supernatural things, especially that the female version of Art the Clown, or like the little girl. There was some supernatural shit going on with her, and especially the ending of Terrifier 2, where things got really weird in the asylum. I remember people being so confused about that, and we're just like, what the hell is going on? Why is Art the Clown coming out of a woman's womb as a head? Like, what is that all about? But I'm hoping this movie will kind of clear things up for those that were confused in the prior film, and I hope it does it in a very interesting way. I hope it's not like, some bullshit reason or just like some cop-out reason as to what's going on. I hope there's something well thought out with the supernatural elements in Terrifier, and I think they'll hit the landing. They'll land on their feet with that particular element. But other than that, you have that, and then of course they're continuing the storyline from Terrifier 2. And you're probably thinking, no shit, Sherlock. Of course they're going to continue the last storyline. And the reason I was kind of surprised that they were going to continue on from the second movie, or like at least with the main character, is mainly because, in the second movie, they didn't really focus on the main character from the first one. Of course, they show her in a few scenes with like her disfigured face, but you didn't really see much of her until like the very ending. And I was wondering if they were going to kind of go that similar route with Terrifier 3 and kind of introduce some new characters or just give us a new protagonist. But no, they're sticking with what was set out before. And I'm glad they're doing that, so it doesn't, cause any more confusion, or instead just we have a more coherent, linear storyline going forward. But speaking of the storyline, very briefly, the main character in this movie being Sienna from the last one, I'm hoping they explore a little more with her character, and if, maybe there's a connection from her childhood regarding Art the Clown, because there's been some speculation that there's going to be some kind of tie-in with that, and especially with her dad, because we didn't see anything about her dad necessarily, but just that one book that had the kind of, I guess it was more of an instruction manual on how to deal with Art the Clown, or like warning about him, and like all the demonic elements. I'm hoping we at least get an explanation as to who her dad was, and why he was so paranoid, and what compelled him to write that book. I hope they add more lore to that, so we have something, interesting to talk about once the film releases. And just, I like to watch breakdowns of a lot of horror franchises. I like to, gain knowledge about certain lore elements and like what makes this thing that thing. Terrifier is one of those movies where I like to, do a little investigative work on the lore itself, because there's a lot of interesting things about the Terrifier franchise, and especially Art the Clown. I'm really interested and seeing, like I said before, if they're going to add anything, unique or interesting to his character, if we're going to get some backstory as to how he came to be. I think that much would be very interesting, and I hope this movie delivers on that, and I think it will. But I do want to go ahead and end off this video with my hopes and expectations after the release of Terrifier 3. I hope this movie does well at the box office. I think it will, because the last one did very well at the box office. I think it made $15 million off of a $250,000 budget, which is really good. So this newest one having a $2 million budget, I think it'll exceed that, and I think we'll probably get more sequels going forward if they have any plans after this movie. If it doesn't, assuming that this movie doesn't have like a conclusion of its own, or like it just ties everything together, I don't necessarily think it will. But if it does, great. If it doesn't, hey, I'm excited to see more from this franchise, and I hope they do some spin-offs here and there, or like kind of like another anthology series, or an anthology movie, I should say, like All Hallows Eve. But with all that being said, I think that's going to do it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and if you made it this far, comment below what your favorite horror movie is, or what your favorite horror movie moment is that you've seen either in the cinemas or at home. If you rented a VHS, if you're that old, because you might be an old bastard like myself. No, I'm just kidding, I'm not that old, but I do remember VHS tapes. But no, seriously, go ahead and type in the comments what's your favorite memory from any horror movie, or whether it be seeing it in the cinema or at home. What was your favorite moment? And also, I'm gonna throw this in as a bonus. If this video does well in terms of viewership and likes and subscribers, I may do a face reveal, quote unquote face reveal, as Art the Clown. I may dress up as Art the Clown this year and do a movie review as Art the Clown, but I may not necessarily review Terrifier 3. I could review as something as, peak excellence, peak cinema, that is Venom 3 The Last Dance. I mean, who knows? Who knows what the future has in store but you guys. So please go ahead, comment below what I asked you earlier, and just do us all a favor, just like the video, subscribe, because hey, at some point, like I mentioned earlier at the beginning of the video, I want this channel to get monetized. I want to get to a point where my salary is worth more than a doctor and nurse's salary. All right, because let's be real here for just a second. I am nursing a lot of people back to health with great Kino content for YouTube, because a lot of people are just not offering that, but I'm willing to do that for you if you will let me. So please do so. Nah, I'm just kidding, but seriously, consider liking and subscribing to this channel. You're not going to regret it, and that's going to do it for this video. Bye for now.